The Galactic Concord had mapped the stars for 10,000 years. 12 species worked together to explore every corner of known space. They had found wonders beyond counting. They had found dangers beyond measure. But nothing they had ever discovered frightened them, quite like the Hollow. The Hollow was a region of space where ships disappeared. It sat at the edge of charted territory, like a wound in the universe itself. Rescue missions went in and never came back. Probe signals died the moment they crossed the boundary. The few survivors who managed to escape were never the same. They would sit in medical bays with empty eyes, unable to speak, unable to eat, unable to do anything but scream when they slept. The Concord had declared the Hollow forbidden space 3,000 years ago. No one went there anymore. No one wanted to know what lived inside Dot. So when the research vessel Ori at dawn detected a small ship limping out of the Hollow, the bridge crew assumed their sensors were broken. Captain Valethora, an Athene with pale blue skin that showed her emotions like a mood ring, ordered a diagnostic check. The sensors were fine. The ship was real. It was a crude thing by Concord standards. Metal hull, chemical propulsion, no quantum shielding. It looked like something a primitive species might build in their first century of space travel. It had no business being anywhere near the Hollow. It certainly had no business coming out of it. Valethora ordered her crew to bring the ship into the docking bay. She expected to find corpses inside, or worse, survivors with shattered minds. She called for a medical team and a security detail. She prepared herself for horror. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping pressure. 5 creatures stumbled out, coughing and squinting in the bright lights of the docking bay. They were bipedal, with soft skin in various shades of brown and pink. They had hair on their heads and small eyes that blinked rapidly as they adjusted to their surroundings. Valethora had never seen anything like them. They were not in any database. They were not from any known world. One of them, a female with short dark hair and a scar across her jaw, stepped forward. She looked at Valethora, looked at the armed guards, looked at the sleek walls of the Ori at dawn. Then she smiled. "Hey," she said. "I'm Commander Jessamaro. Thanks for the pickup. Any chance you've got coffee on this thing?" Valethora did not know what coffee was. She did not care. She was too busy trying to understand how this creature could smile after coming out of the Hollow. The medical scanners showed elevated stress hormones, minor injuries, and severe fatigue. But their minds were intact. Their eyes were clear. They were not screaming. "You came from the Hollow," Valethora said. Her translator worked quickly, turning her words into sounds the creatures could understand. "How are you alive?" Morrow shrugged. "Barely, if I'm being honest. Our engine gave out about 6 hours ago. We've been drifting on emergency power. Another day, and we have been in real trouble." "No," Valethora said. "I mean, how are you saying? How are you standing there talking to me? The Hollow destroys minds. Nothing survives the Hollow." Morrow exchanged a look with her crew. A large male with dark skin and tired eyes stepped up beside her. "I'm Dr. Tomas Reyes," he said. "Ship's medic." "What do you mean, destroys minds?" "We ran into some weird stuff in there, sure, but nothing we couldn't handle." Valthora's skin flushed purple with disbelief. "The entities in the Hollow feed on fear. They invade the mind and force their victims to relive their worst memories forever. Our strongest warriors have been reduced to hollow shells by mere minutes of exposure." "You were in there for how long?" 11 days, Morrow said. The docking bay went silent. Valthora's security team took a step back. Even the medical staff stopped what they were doing to stare. 11 days, Valethora repeated. "And you're asking me for coffee?" "It's been a rough week," Morrow said. "We could really use a hot drink and maybe somewhere to sit down. Then we can talk about whatever those things were. They were definitely unpleasant. Jenkins over there had a pretty bad night on day 4. She gestured to a younger male who gave an awkward wave. But we made it through. That's what matters. Veilthora did not understand. She had seen footage of hollow survivors. She had read the reports, studied the psychological profiles, watched brave soldiers reduced to weeping children by whatever lurked in that cursed space. These creatures should not exist. They should not be standing in her docking bay making small talk. She led them to a conference room and ordered her crew to find something that resembled their requested beverage. She watched them sit down, stretch their limbs, and complain about sore muscles. She watched them laugh at some private joke she did not understand, and for the first time in her long career, Ambassador Veilthora felt something she had never felt before when looking at an alien species. She felt afraid, not of what they might do to her, not of any threat they posed. She was afraid because she was beginning to realize that the universe had just gotten much stranger. Somewhere out there was a world that had produced creatures capable of walking through nightmares and coming out the other side asking for hot drinks. She needed to contact the High Council immediately. They needed to know that humans existed, and they needed to know that humans were not like anything the Concord had ever seen before. The debriefing took place in the largest conference chamber on the Ori at dawn. Veilthora had called in experts from across the Concord. Xenobiologists, military strategists, psychologists, and historians filled the room, all of them staring at the 5 humans seated at the center table. Commander Morrow did not seem bothered by the attention. She sat with her legs crossed and a cup of something brown and steaming in her hands. The Concord's food synthesizers had done their best to recreate coffee based on her description. She said it was close enough. "Start from the beginning," said Dr. Kethmer, a Volani scientist with 6 eyes and a reputation for cold logic. "Tell us everything you experienced in the hollow." Morrow nodded and set down her cup. "We were exploring an uncharted sector when our navigation system failed. By the time we realized where we were already too deep to turn back. Our engine was damaged, and we had to drift through while making repairs." "And the entities?" Kethmer asked. "When did they first appear?" "About 3 hours in," said Dr. Reyes. "We started getting headaches first. Then the visions began. The room went quiet. Every alien in the chamber leaned forward. This was the part they had never been able to study. No survivor had ever been able to describe what happened next. They showed us things," Reyes continued. "Personal things. Memories we had buried. Fears we thought we had forgotten. For me, it was the night my daughter was born. There were complications. I thought I was going to lose them both." He paused and took a breath. "The entities made me relive that moment over and over. The fear, the helplessness, the certainty that everything was about to end." Veilthora felt her skin turn pale gray. "And how did you survive?" Reyes looked at her with tired but steady eyes. "I reminded myself that she lived. My daughter is 12 years old now. She likes to paint, and she hates vegetables. The fear was real, but it was also in the past. I had already survived it once. I could survive it again." The scientists exchanged confused glances. This was not how the hollow worked. Victims did not simply remind themselves that things would be okay. The psychological damage was absolute. The terror was total. "Perhaps your species has some natural immunity," suggested a mentally psychologist, her tentacles twitching with uncertainty. "Some biological defense we have not encountered before." "Not exactly," said Lieutenant Chung, the youngest member of the human crew. "We're not immune to fear. Trust me, I was scared out of my mind in there. But humans have been dealing with nightmares since before we could walk upright." "Explain," said Kethmer. Chung looked around the room, seeming to search for the right words. "Do your species dream when you sleep?" "Some of us do," Veilthora said. The Ethany experience gentle memory echoes during rest. It is considered pleasant. Right, Chun said. Well, humans dream too. But our dreams are not always gentle. Sometimes they are terrifying. We call them nightmares. Our brains create scenarios where we are chased by predators, where we fall from great heights, where the people we love die in front of us. This happens to us almost every night. We have experienced it since childhood. The room fell completely silent. You experience simulated trauma during every sleep cycle? Kefmer asked. From birth? Pretty much, Morrow said. By the time a human reaches adulthood, they have lived through thousands of nightmares. We learn to wake up, shake it off, and get on with our day. It's not fun, but it's normal for us. Dr. Reyes stood up and activated a display screen. He had been working with the ship's computer to prepare a presentation. Human psychology evolved under harsh conditions, he said. Our ancestors were prey animals before they were predators. Our brains developed a system to prepare us for worst-case scenarios. During sleep, we simulate danger so that we can process fear in small doses. It makes us more resilient when real danger comes. He pulled up a chart showing human brain activity during sleep. This is what happens during a nightmare. See these spikes? That is our fear response activating fully. Our heart rate increases, our stress hormones flood our system, and yet we remain asleep. We experience the terror, and then we wake up and continue living. You are saying, Veilthora said slowly, that your species has been training to resist psychological attacks since before you developed language. Basically, yes, Reyes said. The entities in the hollow tried to break us with fear. But fear is something we carry with us every single night. We have learned to live with it. We have learned to function despite it. Kethmer sat back in his chair, all 6 eyes wide. This is unprecedented. Every species in the Concord processes fear differently, but none of us have developed such a mechanism. Our minds are too fragile, too easily overwhelmed. That's why we're still here, Morrow said. Those things in the hollow expected us to break. They didn't understand that we were already broken a long time ago. We just learned how to put ourselves back together every morning. The debriefing continued for hours. The humans described every entity they had encountered, every vision they had endured, every moment of terror they had pushed through. They spoke about it the way soldiers spoke about difficult campaigns. It had been hard. It had been painful. But they had survived. When it was finally over, Veilthora walked the humans to their temporary quarters. She stopped at the door and looked at Commander Morrow with new eyes. Your species frightens me, she admitted. Morrow smiled, but there was no malice in it. We frighten ourselves sometimes too. But that's the thing about fear. Once you learn to live with it, nothing else seems quite as scary anymore. She stepped inside and closed the door, leaving Veilthora alone in the corridor with a single thought echoing in her mind. What else were humans capable of surviving? The message reached the High Council within hours of the debriefing. Within days, the most powerful leaders in the Galactic Concord had gathered on the capital world of Thesan Prime. They came from 12 different species, each one representing billions of lives. And they were all terrified. High Chancellor Morveth stood at the head of the Great Assembly Hall, his insectoid body clicking with nervous energy. Before him floated a holographic map of known space. At its edge, a dark stain spread slowly outward. The hollow was growing. In the past century, the hollow has expanded by 3%, Morveth announced. That may not sound like much, but it now threatens 4 colony worlds. 12 billion citizens will be within its boundary in less than 50 years. The council members shifted in their seats. They had known this for a long time. They had simply chosen not to think about it. We have tried everything, Morveth continued. Military strikes, scientific expeditions, diplomatic attempts to communicate with the entities inside. Every approach has failed. Every ship we send in comes back empty or does not come back at all. He paused and looked around the room. Until now. The doors opened and Commander Morrow walked in. She was wearing a borrowed uniform that did not quite fit, and she looked like she had not slept in days. But she walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. Behind her came the rest of her crew. Dr. Reyes, Lieutenant Chun, Engineers Kowalski and Okonkwo. 5 humans who had done the impossible. Commander Morrow, Morvis said. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for having us," Morrow replied. "I understand you have a problem." The council members murmured among themselves. The humans' casual tone was strange to them. This was a matter of galactic importance. Trillions of lives hung in the balance. And this small creature spoke as if she were discussing the weather. "The hollow is expanding," Morvis said. "We need to stop it. And we believe your species may be the only ones capable of doing so." Morrow raised an eyebrow. "You want us to go back in there?" "We want you to find the source," Morvis said. "Our scientists believe there is something at the center of the hollow. Something that creates the entities and drives the expansion. If it can be found and destroyed, the threat may end. And you can't send your own people because they can't survive the psychological attacks," Morrow said. It was not a question. "Correct. We have tried. We have lost thousands of brave soldiers. Their minds were destroyed within hours of entering the hollow. But your species has shown a resistance we have never seen before. You survived 11 days. We believe you could survive long enough to reach the sender." Morrow looked at her crew. They looked back at her. Something passed between them that the aliens could not understand. A silent conversation built on trust and shared experience. "What are you offering in return?" Morrow asked. Morvis spread his arms wide. "Everything. Full membership in the Galactic Concord. Access to our technology, our resources, our knowledge. Your species would advance 1,000 years overnight. You would have a seat at this very council. Whatever you want, it is yours." The council members nodded eagerly. They would give anything to make this problem go away. They would promise anything to these strange, impossible creatures who could walk through nightmares. Morrow was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I need to talk to my people first. This isn't a decision I can make alone." Morvith nodded. "Of course. We will provide you with communication equipment to contact your homeworld. Take whatever time you need." The humans were given a private chamber with a quantum communicator powerful enough to reach across the galaxy. It took several hours to establish a connection with Earth. Morrow spoke with generals and presidents, and ordinary people who had never imagined they would be talking to aliens. She explained the situation. She described the hollow and the entities inside. She told them about the Concord's offer and what they were being asked to do. The response came faster than anyone expected. Earth said yes. Not for the technology, not for the political power, not even for the promise of advancement. They said yes because somewhere in the darkness of space, something was hurting people. Something was destroying minds and swallowing worlds. And humans had never learned how to walk away from a fight. Mara returned to the council chamber with her answer. "We'll do it," she said, "but not for your gifts. We'll do it because it's the right thing to do. Because those entities in the hollow are causing suffering, and we don't like that. We've spent our whole history fighting monsters, both real and imagined. This is just one more." The council members did not understand. They could not comprehend a species that would risk everything for strangers. But they accepted the answer gratefully. Within a month, the first wave of human volunteers arrived at Thiessen Prime. Soldiers and scientists, doctors and engineers, poets and philosophers. They came from every nation on Earth, united by a single purpose. They were going into the hollow. They were going to find whatever lived at its heart. And they were going to end it. Commander Morrow stood at the head of the fleet, looking out at the gathered ships. Behind her, the crew of the Oriat Dawn watched with something like awe. "They are sending poets," Valthera said softly. "Why would they send poets into a war zone?" Morrow smiled. "Because sometimes the best way to fight fear is with words. Because someone needs to remember what we see in there and turn it into something meaningful. Because humans have always believed that even the darkest places deserve to have their stories told." Valthera shook her head slowly. "I will never understand your species." "That's okay," Morrow said. "Most of the time, we don't understand ourselves either. But we show up anyway. That's what matters." The fleet powered up its engines and began the long journey toward the hollow. Toward the darkness. Toward whatever waited at its heart. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Concord dared to hope. The human fleet crossed into the hollow on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, the attacks had begun. Commander Morrow stood on the bridge of the flagship Endurance, watching her crew as they weathered the first wave. The entities came like shadows, slipping through shields and hulls as if they were not there. They reached into mines and pulled out the worst things they could find. Around her, soldiers gripped their stations with white knuckles. Some had tears running down their faces. Others were breathing hard, their eyes fixed on something no one else could see. The hollow was testing them, searching for weaknesses, trying to find the cracks it could split wide open. "Status report," Morrow said, her voice calm and steady. "All ships holding," came the reply from the communications officer. "Elevated stress levels across the fleet, but no casualties. The psychological support teams are doing their jobs." Morrow nodded. Before they had left, Dr. Reyes had insisted on embedding counselors and therapists throughout the fleet. Every ship had trained professionals whose only job was to help people process what they were experiencing. It had seemed strange to the Concord observers. Why bring healers of the mind into a war zone? Now they understood. The humans were not fighting the entities with weapons. They were fighting them with words, with comfort, with the simple act of holding someone's hand and saying you are not alone. Days passed. Then weeks. The fleet pushed deeper into the hollow than any Concord expedition had ever reached. The attacks grew stronger, more personal, more vicious. The entities learned quickly. They adapted. They found new fears to exploit, new memories to twist. But the humans adapted too. They sang songs to drown out the whispers. They told jokes that made no sense to lighten the mood. They held meetings where people could share their visions and realize that others had seen the same things. The loneliness that the entities tried to create was shattered by the simple fact that humans refused to suffer alone. On day 32, they found a dot at the heart of the hollow. Floating in a space where no stars shone was something vast and ancient. It had no true form. It shifted and changed with every moment. Now a mass of writhing shadows. Now a collection of screaming faces. Now something too terrible to describe. It was old. It was hungry. And it had been feeding on fear for longer than the Concord had existed. Morrow looked at it on the view screen and felt its attention turned toward her. The weight of its gaze was crushing. It pressed against her mind, demanding entry, demanding surrender, demanding that she give in to the terror it promised. She took a deep breath and stood up from her chair. "Open a channel," she said. "All ships. Let everyone hear this." The communication officer hesitated, then obeyed. Across the fleet, speakers crackled to life. Every human in the hollow listened as their commander faced the source of their nightmares. "I know you can hear me," Morrow said to the entity. I know you're old and powerful and you've been doing this for a very long time. But I need you to understand something. The entity pressed harder. Morrow felt her worst memories rising up. The day her mother died. The mission where she lost half her squad. The quiet moments of doubt when she wondered if she was good enough, strong enough, brave enough to lead. She let the memories come. She did not fight them. She simply acknowledged them and kept speaking. You think fear is your weapon. You think if you show us enough horror, we'll break. But you don't understand what we are. We're the species that invented horror stories for fun. We're the people who built roller coasters and haunted houses and told ghost stories around campfires just to feel the thrill of being scared. Around her, the bridge crew straightened in their seats. They were listening. They were remembering who they were. We don't survive nightmares because we're not afraid, Morrow continued. We survive because we wake up every single morning and choose to keep going anyway. We've been doing it since before we had fire. We'll keep doing it long after you're gone. The entity screamed, not with sound, but with pure psychic force. It threw everything it had at the human fleet. Every fear, every trauma, every dark thought that had ever crossed a human mind came, flooding back in a tidal wave of terror. And the humans screamed back, not in fear, in defiance, in rage, in the stubborn refusal to give up that had carried their species through ice ages and plagues and wars and every other catastrophe the universe had thrown at them. The fleet opened fire, not with lasers or missiles, but with light. Pure, brilliant light generated by engines pushed past their limits. The darkness of the hollow recoiled. The entity writhed and twisted, trying to escape the radiance that burned away its shadows. It could not comprehend what was happening. For millions of years, it had fed on fear without challenge. No species had ever fought back. No prey had ever refused to break. And now these small, fragile creatures were standing in its home and telling it that it was not welcome anymore. The entity began to fade. Without fear to sustain it, it had nothing left. It was ancient, but it was also dependent. It had forgotten how to exist without the terror of others feeding it. As it died, it sent one last message into Morrow's mind. A single question, desperate and confused. Why? Morrow answered without hesitation. Because someone had to. Because you were hurting people. And because humans have never been very good at accepting that some things can't be beaten. The entity vanished. The hollow collapsed inward, shrinking rapidly as the force that had sustained it disappeared. The fleet raced toward the boundary, engines straining, barely making it out before the region sealed itself forever. When they emerged into normal space, the Concorde fleet was waiting for them. Hundreds of ships from a dozen species, all watching in disbelief as the human vessels limped out of the impossible. Vilthurus' voice came over the communication channel. Commander Morrow, the hollow is gone. Our sensors show only empty space where it used to be. What happened in there? Morrow leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She was tired. She was so very tired. But she was also alive, and so was her crew. And so were all the billions of people who would never have to fear the hollow again. We had a conversation, she said, and we came to an understanding. It won't be bothering anyone anymore. There was a long silence. Then, across the fleet, across the gathered ships of the Galactic Concorde, cheering erupted. Alien voices raised in celebration, in relief. In profound gratitude for the strange species that had done what no one else could, Morrow smiled and opened her eyes. Somewhere far away, on a little blue planet that most of the galaxy had never heard of, people were waking up from nightmares and getting ready to face another day. They did not know what their species had just accomplished. They did not know that they were heroes, but that was okay. Humans had never needed to know they were special. They just kept going, one day at a time, one nightmare at a time, forever refusing to stay down. That was what made them dangerous. That was what made them wonderful. That was what made them human.